Assalamu alaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh, everybody. How are you? How are you? How are you? This is Preacher Moss, the host of the SOS the ShOUT Show. Welcome back to another broadcast. I hope you're in a great state of mind and great state of spirit, and definitely a great state of health these days. Listen, I want to welcome everybody that's come to the show for the first time. Thank you for coming. While it's your first time, we hope it's not the last time. And for my brothers and sisters that tune in and support regularly, may I ask that you continue to do so, and allow me to please thank you for that type of support, because it's so needed. The topic today, brothers and sisters, let me say it right off the bat. It is the art of having someone's back. Now, people go, what is the art of having someone's back? It is the space of supporting someone. It is the space of understanding someone may need assistance. It is, in some regards, standing on post. Now, that whole idea of standing on post is something that I've referred to before in other telecasts. It comes from the FOI, the Fruit of Islam, the military manual about protection and security. Now, people think that it's protection and security of just an NOI. No, I think it has a deeper connotation, and it is a deeper connotation because it's how we protect our society. And this idea, and this medium, if you will, is extremely important in terms of what we're seeing today. I have taken some time out to pull some things together, and I've seen even more so the work that needs to be done. The idea of having somebody's back, if you grew up in the inner city or in the community, it meant you have my back. You watch my back. If something happened over there, make sure nothing happens behind my back. That's a really strong colloquialism. Nothing happens behind my back, because I can't see what's going on behind my back. And even in religious terms, I equate having my back, which is almost a belief, if you will, in the unseen, because you can see something, but you can't see what's behind you, the unseen, al-ghaib, if you will. And so for that, I thought about this, thinking about having someone's back. It really predates the human being's consciousness. You know, we have a very subtle nuance about who has our back, who doesn't have our back, but it's always in a localized type of thinking in terms of where we are in the world. So if there's a fight about to go on, what you're trying to make sure is, if the fight is not going well, have my back, make sure nothing happens to me. Now, I don't know if anybody have ever been out with somebody who is a loudmouth and likes to fight and they can't fight. I won't bring up any names. And their whole pretension of getting into a fight is because they think that you have their back. Meaning that if I get in a fight, you're going to get in a fight with me. We're all fighting together. I'm like, well, that's a bad example of having somebody's back. But then there are people who say, hey, man, you have my back in a very meaningful way, in a very dedicated way, meaning that, you know, if something happens to me, do you have my back in terms of, will you watch out for my family? Will you watch out for me for my job? Will you watch out on different types of levels? I think what's going on today requires a revisiting of what it means to have somebody's back. It is my assertion that we find ourselves protesting in the streets behind George Floyd, because in that video where he was being choked to death, assassinated by this officer, I saw, brothers and sisters, I saw a dead activism. I saw that no one really had his back. And it could be the fact that, yes, there were police there. I'm going to give that there. There were police there. But I think it was the fact that the police presence has been so strong, and the idea of police brutality has been so strong, that people don't feel like they can act on their natural impulses, which are many times their moral impulses, their moral core values and things like that. And so it's interesting because I'm beginning to watch this whole idea, like, who has your back? In the age of Trump, the age of COVID, who has your back? Now, we learn about the importance of having our back, of course, from our parents. The first people to have our backs are our parents, or we hope that they're parents. And I'm going to say something, and it's not controversial, but I was a school teacher for 11 years, and I witnessed children come to a classroom that were traumatized because the first teachers of the children didn't have their back. They did not have their back. So even as we began to talk and get closer and closer into the crux of this conversation, could it be a thing that communally we've moved away from the neighborly space, even the familiar space of family having one another's back? Could it be the times now have moved up to the space where having somebody's back is tied way too much to not having my back, but you scratch your back, you scratch my back, I scratch your back, which is not what we're talking about. That's commerce. Those are transactions. I'm talking about an equitable event whereby we find truth. One, in the ability to help somebody, and two, the ability to be able to accept help or recognize that there's help there. At this point, man, I'm probably going out on a limb here, but the current administration has demonstrated something to me, and I don't think I'm the only one who's seen it. But the top of our leadership has, in some regards, flipped the whole idea of having my back and flipped it into blind loyalty. So the president don't want you to have his back. He wants you to serve his whims, which is a big thing between having my back, because when you have somebody's back, you make a decision. I would even go further by saying, in the Bible, in the Quran, and in the Torah, the idea of having somebody's back is always tied into a definition of someone has your back. One of the first things I heard before I was Muslim was this idea that you're not truly a believer until you want for your brother what you want for yourself. And of course, I put in one for your brother or your sister what you want for yourself. And it's very, very interesting because it equates an idea that there has to be balance, a visible balance for what they are talking about. Per se, I'm not comfortable eating around a person who's hungry and they don't have food. Many of you probably go through this. I'm like, look, when I was broke, I was like, hey, man, I'm going to go over here and eat this sandwich. I don't want to look at you hungry. I'm going to go eat it. But then it evolved into, you know what? Let me find out if this person's hungry. Let me expand. And that aspect of having someone's back is interesting because it moves literally into the metaphysical range, if you will, because you're beginning to engage how the world affects people. And in that, framing some motion, some guidance of how to assist people. Now, I'm not talking about charitable giving, things like that. That's what happens in the main space. Charitable giving, that happens in the main space. Nonprofits, that happens in the main space. Remember that the whole goal of nonprofits is to serve the needs and the spaces and the gaps that the government does not feel compelled to serve or interested in serving. Take the money, you do it. That is off to the side. But in current situations, as I look at current events, as I look at, we have an election year coming up, I realize that maybe, brothers and sisters, maybe the whole idea behind disenfranchisement or voter suppression is the idea to make it look like the vehicle of voting is not connecting to me having my brothers or sisters back. Because the people who vote for one party clearly don't have your interests at hand, and the people that vote for another party don't have your interests at hand. But there is a middle that requires responsibility and accountability, which speaks to the fact that care needs to be happening. And one of the things that's happened, in my estimation, I could be wrong, I could be totally wrong. I tell you that every week, every day I'm on here. One of the things that could be wrong is we've not reframed what having someone's back means. Where does it start? What are the things that create sustainability for this idea to have someone's back? Because I laughed about this. This happened to me recently. I was trying to help a situation, if you will. In fact, let me give a. There you go, man, Tariq. There you go. There you go. There you go. It came from OG Brotherhood, Respect, and Love. That's where it came from. Thank you, brother. I appreciate it. But that OG respect and brotherhood still comes from a tradition of caring. Every OG has a mother, father, inshallah, but every OG has a mother. And every OG is tied in some way. It's tied in some way to nature. And when I say nature, I mean there's a giving, there's a space, there's a, how would I frame it? There's a clear understanding that you didn't get there by yourself. And it's something to me that's endemic of African American communities specifically, but even more importantly, Native American communities. Because we don't talk about them, because they were the first people to fully engage unsuccessfully with, I don't even want to say white supremacy, I'm just saying European oppression. And they never really lived to tell the story about how they survived, because in many regards they did survive. You know, African Americans, we evolved from a different spiritual ethos that began the fact that we understood how we can integrate into society, but more importantly, understanding how we were assessed in terms of value assets slowly allowed us to move along, and we evaluated ourselves. We began to have value and understanding of ourselves. And I believe that's the first thing you need to do when you're talking about having somebody's back. Have a value assessment of what that means. Assalamu alaikum, Sister Nadir. Thank you for coming. Walaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Having a value assessment of what that means. Because too often, in many situations, the space between, again, having someone's back or making sure having someone's back is balanced against what does it get me? You know, I want the value of this relationship, right? People want the value of relationships and they haven't even put anything into the relationships. Literally, people want to know the value of something. You haven't even built anything. And I find this really, really particular because I began to look at leadership at the top. And I think one of the mystical things that people are actually missing about this particular presidency, as opposed to the last presidency, is there's been a shift in value where people put having someone's back strictly as loyalty, not layered as loyalty, understanding, friendship, sacrifice. It's almost like a contract when you have somebody's back. You know, when you have a contract, there's an offer, there's acceptance, there's primary estoppel, there's mutual assent. You know, you have all these things, and that's what real friendship and having somebody's back looks like. It's like a contract, but nobody signs it. Nobody signs it. Experience signs it. You know, care signs it. Sacrifice signs it. You know, when you go through, like they say, you go through the fire with somebody, you know, that contract, if it was paper, it would burn up. But if it was built in steel, it's going to get tougher. And I believe in my heart of hearts that the art of having someone's back has not been taught. We don't talk about it. We don't talk about citizenship in schools anymore. Remember when you used to have citizenship classes? They were garbage anyway, but we don't talk about citizenship anymore. And because we don't talk about citizenship, there's not a longer discussion about fellowship, and then there's not a longer discussion about having someone's back. Because these days, having someone's back is almost like a nonprofit action. The OG love, as the Imam said, the OG love is a different kind of love. And I've experienced the OG love. I'm old enough now, I give OG love. Because it has so much to do about legacy. I recently had a situation with a young man. We went back. We went back and we had a conversation, and we differed on something. But what was interesting is that we differed as men, and I don't want this to be taken out of context. We differed as men, but we talked as men, and we had an extremely masculine conversation. Meaning, we were trying to bring the best of our manhood to this conversation. And I'm not saying anything, but I'm talking about bringing the best of our manhood to this conversation because that's the way we saw legacy being built. That's the way we felt moving forward that we could be the most effective. Same things, and this when I say I'm very masculine conversation. Let me interject here. This was not a conversation about absolutes. It was a conversation about ideas. Meaning, my idea could be great, but your idea could be greater. My idea could be great, but your idea could be wrong. My idea could be great, but my approach could be incorrect. And in that space, we began to understand ideas. Ideas frame how you have someone's back. Because in the current situation, there are just so many distractions. Having someone's back for some folks is an invitation to put a target on somebody's back. So you're not talking about anything in that target in a large scope. That target on that person's back is a thing that's the T that substitutes for truth, truthfulness, and trust. And so we have a lot of superficial, if you will, a lot of superficial relationships, a lot of superficial conversations. And we can't get to the place where we want to be because we have all this muck and wallow to go through. And sometimes it's so thick. It's so thick. And I will say this, when people get into arguments and they don't talk for years, it's just that the muck and wallow is so thick, you have to fight so hard to get through all the insignificant pain and bad feeling and non-communication. You have to get to that point to do what? Have a basic conversation. And at that point, you're tired. At that point, you're old. There's nothing worse than watching two people who loved each other, who had each other's back, fall out. And at the end of life, or in a crisis, find out that person's always been there for me. I say there's nothing worse, there's nothing better, but it's nothing worse because you wasted time. And maybe one of the earmarks as we begin to look is the fact that these days, call it COVID, call it social justice, but even now, as I watch the protests, and I enjoy the young folks going out there, but when I look at it, I still don't get the feeling that these groups of people have each other's backs. Speak on it, ma'am. You know what I'm talking about. I don't feel like they have each other's backs. I don't feel like they stand on posts for one another. I don't feel like there's a situational a modicum of thought that allows me to feel like these people are standing on general order number 5. They're not on post. They're not waiting to be relieved. And the reason why they're not waiting to be relieved because they're not on post in the first place. Clearly, there's a definition that maybe I'm missing here. But one of the facts of it is I feel like everybody these days, they can't get to having one another's backs because it's competition. It's competition. A brother asked me, "What, you don't think I have you don't think I have your back?" And I said, "No." And he's, "Why you said?" I said, "Because you're busy trying to compete with me." And he goes, "What does that mean?" I said, "Brother, I'm not trying to compete with you." And here's the deal about competition versus having someone's back. It's so much about intention. Art of having someone's back is having clear intention that they can see, they can feel, they can trust. The people around you go, "That's a sincere brother. Whatever he say, he's going to try and make that happen." And we're missing that because everything is about competition. Everything is about that target on one another's back because we think if we hit the target, we're going to get a prize. If we get the target, we're going to be rewarded in some regard. But the fact of the matter is, you have participated in a destructive process that furthermore allows us not to have one another's back. Yes, you're not truly a believer until you want for your brother or sister what you want for yourself. What does that mean these days? I literally talk to people and I'll say, hey, I'm tired of talking, I'm going to go to sleep. And they're trying to keep me on the phone to talk more. I just told you I'm asleep. If you're really down for me, then you go, hey, brother, we can pick this conversation up tomorrow. And it's just that simple. Because the gentleman I just had a conversation with, what was beautiful about this conversation is that we may have disagreed on some things, but he appreciated that I came to him. And in coming to him directly, I didn't go through a whole lot of, Sister Nadir is correct. Sister Nadir is correct. I came to him directly. And I said, I want to talk to you before it gets out anyway. And maybe I'll talk about that conversation later on in another podcast. But it was that we came together. And the first thing I said was, I just want you to know, even though we differed on this thing, I just want you to know, coming to you, I had your back. And he said, I know. He said, that's why I picked up the phone, because I knew you had my back. Even though we had differently, he said, I knew you had my back. And this is something that needs to happen in the Muslim community. Sister Nadir said there's no sense of community. I'm going to tell you why I think so, Sister Nadir, and you can correct me. In our masjids, in our ummah, in the non-profit Muslim chat, everybody is in competition. And the thing is, it's not a good competition. It's not a good competition that raises all the boats. The water raises all the boats. No, it is the competition to make sure I have market share. The competition to make sure I have more followers. The competition to make sure I have a better grade of donors. And it's not genuine. Because in that competition, like I said to this young man, it's wonderful that we can have a conversation of ideas and there's no competition. And he said, why? I said, because if it was competition, my brother, I will automatically move to the fact that to win the competition, I have to remove compassion and generosity. I have to remove compassion and generosity. Sister Nadir, if there's no sense of community, it's because we're in this weird competition. I don't like the imam. I don't like the sister on the board. I don't like this. I don't like that. Because in your vainness, some of you brothers and sisters, you've issued yourself to competition. And you're not smart about it. The worst individual to walk the world is Shaitan, Satan. But I give him this. He's not dumb. And Shaitan may have told you, do this, try this. He may have made suggestions, but you never heard him say, I'm in competition with Allah. He said, I'm in competition with a human being, but I'm not in competition with Allah. And that's intelligence. From the most evil person, the most rejected, he still has a scope of intelligence. All he's done is removed the compassion and generosity, and he lets each and every one of us deal with ourselves, minus those things. So as we begin to wrap up, brothers and sisters, this whole idea of the art of having somebody's back is have a conversation with them about what having their back looks like. Tell them, brother, I want to support you, but I want to make sure that it's inclusive of compassion, inclusive of a generosity, not for me just giving it, but for you taking it. Here's my brother right here. A good friend bails you out of jail. Your best friend is sitting next to you in jail. Yeah, that's it. That's it. That's my little brother right there. I got your back, and he has my back. But to wrap up, what was that thing I sent you, JT? It was a thing about two brothers, and I'll leave on this. This is a great illustration of having each other's back. JT, I think you still have it. He framed it, as a matter of fact. It was the idea of two brothers who worked and they had a little bit of rice. And the issue was they were going to split the rice. And the one brother tries to give his portion to his other brother. He says, because you have children. You and your children need that rice. And that brother took that portion and gave it back to his brother. And he said, you take the rice because you're young. You want to get married. You need to show that you can provide. The moral of the story is the rice never moved anywhere. I'm giving you a metaphor. The rice never moved anywhere. The rice is a metaphor for love. So that's right. You better have that joint. My point is, having each other's back should not be a transaction. It should be a translation. And you're translating love, trust, respect, and it's not a competition. And it has all the elements, like I said, of generosity and compassion and consistency. So, brothers and sisters, do an inventory every once in a while, and think about the people who have your back. Not the ones who have your back, but the ones who had your back. And maybe it wasn't a person that was in your life a long time. Maybe somebody that did you a solid when you really, really needed it, but they had your back. And they weren't looking for anything. They were looking for you to be the best you in that situation that you could be and give you some relief. So I'm going to sign off, and I'm going to ask everybody, remember, think about who has your back. Think about that story about the rice. JT, love you, man. Imam, thank you. Sisters, assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. I will see you tomorrow, inshallah, here on the ShOUT Show, the SOS. Take care now.